When George Washington became the President of the United States, he appointed Thomas Jefferson as the Secretary of State and Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury. Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton were both members of George Washington's cabinet, but they had widely different political opinions, and they had different opinions on how to rule the government. This is how the two-party system came to be. It was divided into Federalists and Democratic Republicans. Alexander Hamilton was a Federalist, which meant that he believed in a strong central power, which should be run by the well-educated elite, whereas Thomas Jefferson was a Democratic Republican, and therefore he was suspicious of a strong central power, and he believed that the local government should have, or the state and local government should have more influence. He also believed that the government should be run by farmers and tradespeople rather than the elite. The Federalists believed in a loose interpretation of the Constitution, whereas the Democratic Republicans believed in a strict interpretation. This meant that they disagreed on almost everything. The Federalists wanted to build the economy with a focus on exports and manufacturing, whereas the Democratic Republicans believed that the economy should be built around agriculture. The Federalists wanted to implement a national bank, but since the Constitution didn't mention any provisions for the national bank, the Democratic Republicans viewed it as unconstitutional. The main supporters of the Federalists were merchants, manufacturers, landowners, investors, and lawyers, and the clergy, which meant that rich and affluent people were more likely to be Federalist. Farmers and tradespeople, they tended to be Democratic Republicans.
In 1789, while Washington was shaping the new government, he had to shape the executive branch. Here he had Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of Treasury, and Henry Knox as Secretary of War. As Hamilton and Jefferson had very different political ideas, their disagreements were a bit problematic. This was the cause to the two-party system, which divided the Northerners as Federalists and the Southerners as Democratic Republicans. During the French Revolution, the Democratic Republicans wanted to support France, whereas the Federalists wanted to support the British. This caused President Washington to take a middle position and declare that the United States wouldn't support either sides of the conflict. The United States government practiced isolationism as its main foreign policy strategy for over 100 years following. Washington believed that America was too young of a nation and too much in debt to participate in any war. Making the choice of not supporting any of Britain or France, Washington kept the United States out of a difficult war.
The Sedition and Alien Act was made in 1798. The act was made because Adams and the Federalists accused the Democratic Republican ideas of being dangerous to the welfare of the nation and of favoring foreign powers. This was a problem since many immigrants were active in the Democratic Republican Party. The act consisted of 4 measures, where 3 of them was the Alien Act that raised the residence requirements from 5 to 14 years and allowed the president to deport or jail any foreigner who was considered undesirable. The 4th measure, the Sedition Act, set fines and jail terms to anyone trying to hinder the government or expressing false statements against the government. This led to many Democratic Republicans being prosecuted and jailed. The party felt it was a violation of freedom of speech from the First Amendment.